And you have a person with you, correct? Yeah, my brother, George the Blackbush, a Casbah to overseas.
The new treasurer of Kansas Democratic Emir Bucott.
In the jury show that accordance initiative as well. Thank you for your moving information, and certainly from something that you represent, not only in action, but from the heart. And that's where a live movement really has shots. So, thank you. Alrighty, we're going to step into the next presenter. This is Ms. Melinda Lewis, licensed master social worker. Yes, if you've seen her before, she's got great information, great enthusiasm in her presentation, and great information to share. She is a professor of practice at KU School of Social Welfare and was for many years a community organizer with El Centro.
Thanks, Amber. It's great to be here. It's certainly always, for me, really exciting to have folks who are making this the next time they're coming to Topeka, into state capital, and those for whom this is what I hope will be the first of many visits. So when the day for Advocacy Day this year approached, and I knew that Becky was going to ask me to again I just started kind of like my advocacy cheerleading bit at Lobby Day. Several folks that I talked to said, yeah, but Melinda, this year, what are you going to say? This year is hard. And so, Billy, that's where I'm going to start. Because, yes, many of the programs that Alliance depend on, or food assistance, or housing supports, for education, for healthcare, many of those are frozen or threatened or cut. And many of us hold identities, many of you hold identities that are marginalized or threatened or contested. That's true. And if I would not be the equitable and integral social worker that I aspire to be always, if I came and shared anything but the truth. And yet, here we are together. We are committed to this work together. And we know if we study history, and I hope that we do have some sense of where we are positioned in this moment, in the arc of history. We know that these are not the first hard times. This year is not the first hard year, and for many, this is not the first wave of repression and retreat and to stall. It is our time, though. And as social workers, it is our work. And so, yes, I will share with you that this is a hard year. And the good news, and we all need good news, the good news, social workers are not afraid of hard work. Hard conversations are not new to us. It's core to our profession and really a key part of how we shape the purpose of what we do in the world. So these are not uniquely difficult conversations you will have in advocacy, nor entirely new skills or values or knowledge you will bring to this work. The policy work that we will do, that you will practice, maybe beginning today or maybe just yet again today, that policy practice draws on the core social work competencies that you have and are continuing to build. And more good news, the work that you do in the Capitol will make the other work that you do, which is also hard, just in sometimes different ways, make that work more promising, more sustainable, and more successful. So we'll talk a little bit. I'm going to share some of what I have learned and what I continue to learn in my own advocacy practice, which I now just have to do in the evenings and on the weekends, but on Saturdays, because Saturdays is a work day for a lot of us as faculty. But the advocacy lessons that I have learned in my practice and learn still with students and social workers with whom I have the deep joy to collaborate on issues that matter to our profession. So we'll talk about some of those tips and in tactics. It's not that they don't matter, but what matters most, and really I think the reason Becky asked me to come back is because I shared this card. You already know what you need to be a social work advocate, to be a social work policy practitioner, and a great one, because you will draw on social work to do that work, and the same practices, the same commitments that you are forging every day in your classes, in practicum, in your own self-reflective juries as a social worker and as a human. That same work is going to be purposed and leveraged and delivered to the Kansas legislature. It is a part of our daily practice and our lifelong journey. And that was true last year, and it will be true next year, and 5 years from now, and as far as I can certainly see. Making this year, yes, hard, but not a totally new story in the social work story. So let's look at then some of these practices, and I don't know, I think Becky's gonna do this for me? Okay. This is the part that I'm always a little bit about, because going on state here, that this is gonna move. So it is still true that your advocacy, your policy practice ideally begins with your own policymakers first. They work for you, and that's still true, even if they are people who you always agree with, they should still hear from you. Even if they're people that you're not sure you have ever seen eye to eye with, they should still hear from you all the time. They're still your best chance for a meaningful meeting, and they can be an important step in connections with other policymakers. And they should hear about the effects of their actions, no matter what, no matter whether they are going to be really glad to hear you speak your truth, or may really wish you had not shown up. They work for you, and it is our job to make sure that they remember that, and that your clients and your colleagues and your friends and your neighbors see you practicing democracy, which is a practice that's going to take a lot of determination and repetition. I was speaking with a couple of students from Arcady School of Social Welfare for their advocacy practice, and I think, Serena, didn't you ask something about like what makes for an effective advocate in your history? And the answer that I told her was, maybe not all that impressive, but yeah, I'm nothing if not pretty honest. I said, I think, and I've heard it from policymakers, what has made Melinda successful is she just doesn't go away. And once we realize that she's not going to go away, then we just have to deal with it. And so you, as a policy practitioner, need to make sure that people know this is not just a one-time thing. They're not just here as your instructors giving you extra credit, although, as a parent, I never saw extra credit. I don't appreciate it. It's always a good idea. But you're not here just for that transaction. You're here for a transformational relationship with the government that we must insist continues to serve us and to serve the people that we care about. So now more than ever, that's a little bit different this year. Our policymakers need to remember that for us, democracy and being about the work of being represented well is a key part of who we are and how we're going to show up in the world. So in those relationships, you need to be ready to convey a succinct, factual case, remembering that truth isn't just represented in statistics, but also in the stories and the lived experience and wisdom of your practice and the people that you serve. Amber, you know, my heart sings when we see those videos and hear people doing the practice of saying why their social work matters, because that's a message that we need to be ready to share with our policymakers too. They need to know what we know about what programs work, what needs look like, and what kinds of policy investments it will take to make our state work better for people. We're really doing them a service by sharing this wisdom. They may not always appreciate it, but it's true. They need that information if they're going to make good policies work. And I have seen this work of conveying lived experience done exceptionally well by people who don't have an advanced degree in anything that looks like advocacy. Single moms talking about the difference that childcare supports make in their lives. Kids, there's still to me kids, but young adults transitioning from foster care talking about the difference it will make it dating for the families at age just year ready to adulthood. Working parents explaining how Medicaid makes their possibility of working more realistic. That's valuable information, and you need to be ready to convey it. And we know as social workers that, as in all parts of our practice, being able to be effective in the world also means doing some internal work. So we need to be ready to share that information, but we also need to navigate and manage our own emotions, because Lisa and I were talking about this as we gathered early this morning. Your buttons might get pushed when you're in the legislature. They'll use words that we don't use to talk about the people that we love. And maybe, this has happened to me in the last couple of weeks, maybe they'll lose their cool. And it's going to be up to us to make sure that we are being real in our emotions. Those aren't to be hidden or suppressed, but also that we are able to work through those emotions so that our truth can come through. You need to be ready with not only that case, and we'll look at a tool that you can use to help you develop that, and call it an elevator speech with that effective and concise case. But you also need to have a specific ask. So that, go for your ask. Okay. We're going to do the elevator speech quite yet. Like, I'll ship out like for you, people excited, like I'm typing the elevator speech. Here, I want people to know that you need to be ready to ask something. You're not in the Capitol just for a photo op, as I love taking your picture. And that's okay if you're okay with getting your picture taken, but that's not enough, and they can't get away with just the photo op. We need to know where they stand so that we know where we stand. Sometimes the answer to your ask is going to be no, or it's going to be just like, okay, yeah. I just had microphones cut off you before, but you can say to make me go away. You have a far stretch to do. You just think it's a technological issue, and you just get louder and louder until maybe they call police in from the church. But we're here, 18 back on. They're thinking on Jacob, but I literally got. So the point of making an ask, even if we're going to get shifty and dodge and not would be answer you, is the more you can do to pin them down on whether they support what you're asking or not, the more that you can salvage something valuable from even a tough conversation. Because if the answer is no and you know that you can rework your power map and move on to the next target that you're going to try to engage. If you didn't ask them anything and they just have to stand there and smile and you maybe take a selfie with you, then you didn't get what you need from that interaction, and you've left some of their work undone for you. Doing advocacy is, there you go. Can you just go back, Seki? I'll promise, I'll signal you when we're going to do the elevator speech, right? A part of the advocacy, I guess this is where I held maybe a little bit bad news. If you thought today was going to be check advocacy off of my list of things to do, and I can go on with the rest of my semester in my screen, and the weather's getting nicer, Sorry. Because doing policy practice effectively is about ongoing relationships. That's the foundation of real change. The good news is social workers know from practice that as long as we're in relationship, there's possibility. Good things can happen, and we're leaving those doors open. The flip side, I always have to find some good thing, good news and everything. The flip side of this is today is not the most high stakes thing in the world. If your first visits over there don't go as well as you might have hoped today, there's always the next time. Because there's the follow-up from today. Here's a thing that I didn't get a chance to say, Senator, or I thought that this story might also be helpful for you to hear, or we would love to have you come visit our agency. Here are some times when we could host you. There's always a next opportunity for an ongoing relationship. On Martin Luther King Day, my community organized a community service day, and I made my 13-year-old come it because I didn't have school. Like, let's go together. And then I mortified her endlessly because one Rice City Councilman was there. And of course, I'm going to position myself so that I'm packing these boxes next to him. If I have a thing I want to talk to him about energy efficiency building in our community, and I can't let that opportunity go because we're in a long-term relationship. He's that 2 more years into 2.5 more years in his term, and I want that to be an ongoing part of my connection with him. You set yourselves up for success when you equip yourself with intelligence about who you're going to visit with, what they care about, and the kinds of information you think they are most likely to find persuasive. So if you haven't done that already, you pull it up, kslegislature.org, and see who are you meeting with, where are they positioned, and where are they from, especially if they're not your own legislator. What other committees do they sit on? What bills have they sponsored? The more you can build some bridges between you and them, the more you can pave your way for those future interactions. And then the last thing you need to worry about in setting off to do policy practice are logistics. So you don't want to think that you're maybe going to get lost on the way to the hearing or not be able to recognize the agency bureaucrat that you're trying to influence, or you forget who's the co-chair or the vice chair at your committee. Beth has done a lot of those logistics for us already, but for your future policy practice endeavors, because I know there will be future, anything you can do to manage that in advance then is going to free more of your intellectual and emotional bandwidth to do the work of your advocacy and your policy practice engagement. Okay, now we're ready for elephants and beaches, Becky. And I see some elected social workers in the room, so we're going to get done with this pretty quickly so that you can hear from them. But really, this is just a tool to help you have kind of like some training deals almost for your initial interactions. The idea of elevator speech is to give you a framework to develop a concise and at least potentially persuasive message that you can deliver to a policymaker target in about the time it takes you to ride between floors in an elevator, which is a little bit longer in the Kansas legislature because they use an old-timey elevator, I admit. But really, it's a couple of minutes or less. More than 2 minutes, they've already probably walked away. And unless you're the type who will wait outside the bathroom door, don't think I bummed, then you're probably going to get only about this couple of minutes for you to have this interaction. So you want to be as ready as you can to say what we should do, what that's going to look like, and why it matters. What are the potential outcomes we can get for doing this specific thing, whether that specific thing is a policy change or holding the course where a policy investment is realizing real gains right now, and you fear that pulling it out would have negative consequences for the people we serve. So this is what this elevator speech looks like. I would love nothing more than to practice with any of you today before this afternoon. I know that makes me sound extra lame, but the students who are here know that that is totally true. Like I would love it. I will help you write an op-ed to the newspaper if you want to do that. I will help you get ready for testimony in the legislature, and I will practice your elevator speech with you backwards and forward. I'll play the legislator and that you play the legislator. Let's get you as ready as you can to be, you believe that you are confident that you are ready to do this, because I believe that you are. And policymakers will see that you are, if we can just help you be ready to fly in the full greatness of your social work values and knowledge and skills, meaning the world of the Kansas legislature. So I really do. I want to talk to these elected social workers who are telling the social work story in the legislature on a regular basis. So I think we can, but this is that slide was just my extra exportation. And the example that, it's going to be scary the first time. I say this, and then I think that maybe this makes people more free and not less, but at least then I'm honest and it's real. My heart counts when I make calls to Congress almost all the time. And I do that at least a couple of times a week. You would think that I would not be freaked out. But you know what? I have learned my heart pounding doesn't actually hurt me. I'm not having a heart attack. It's not because it's not damaging my health. It's just stressing me out a little bit. And that is just a reminder that I could do things when I'm stressed. I could do things I'm scared about. I can pick up the phone and call Congress. I can present testimony in the legislature. I can do my 3 minutes of public comments at my city council, even though all of those names make my voice shake just a little and think my heart count doesn't make my hands by you. I just be out when I talk anyway. But it is a reminder to me that I can do things even when they scare me. And you know who else can? You. And you can think about the first time that you sat down with a client or presented to your agency's board or spoke in front of your class. I bet those memories are seared in your minds. But the 6th time that you sat down with a client to do an intake, or the 10th time that you had to present something to a class, probably not as much, right? Because now you know that you can be successful in those encounters even when they bring you some real trepidation. And there is truly no prayer demonstration of your commitment to yourself and our profession, and most importantly, the clients you serve, than reminding yourself that you're going to do it not because it doesn't scare you, but even though it does, and you're going to bring your whole self to that work. So let's take these fantastic social workers in the legislature. So we have, you remember a short video, Suzanne and Susan, that Becky, once you watch, is you're in it, so you're extra famous. It's short, but then I'm going to fill in anything else in your bio that isn't in this video, and then let you talk to these subs. All right, here's the video to real. We'll let them make a raptor back. So the reasons that I am so glad that they agreed to come and talk with you is so that you can both hear, you can do 2 weeks, hear from them about what's happening in the legislature and get their grievership brought to you, but also so that you can see that they are people. Whilst they are only only 3 social workers in the legislature. So certainly not everybody you talk to today is going to be a social worker and bring a social work sensibility. Those other legislators are also people. You have conversations with that. I think that being able to experience that in real life before you go over to the Capitol can hopefully help you be more ready to do it to get there. So I just really want each of you to talk a bit about why you decided to run for office as a social worker and how you show up as a social worker in Kansas.
I have dose in my rake smoker. Good morning, everyone. Wow, what a fantastic room full of social workers. I can't tell you how excited I was when I walked in that door and I saw how many people are here. This is really, really inspiring for me. Why I decided to run? Well, since getting my MSW at KU, I have always done policy and advocacy work. I've never worked in my clinical space, and I have utmost regard and respect for everyone who does. But for me, my path was really in the policy and advocacy space. And so I've been doing that for, like 17 or 18 years. I did it in the state for a while for an advocacy group at Topeka. And for the past 10 years, I've been working for a national policy group. They were remotely from my home in Lawrence. I decided to run because it was going to be an open seat in my district. The incumbent decided not to run for re-election. And given that I had always been in the policy and advocacy space, I worked as an advocate and a lobbyist in Topeka right after being in my MSW for 7 years. I thought this is really kind of the next step I can take to do everything I can to change policy that makes a difference in people's lives on a daily basis. So yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thought Suzanne, since she's new, that she should answer.
This is awesome. I just always love coming and I forget how many times I've here now. And the group always grows, and it's really we take credit. We need you. We need you to stay in the state, by the way, too. They have jerked off to some other state. So I'd always been working in community mental health centers in Kansas, and primarily doing crisis work, and then went into administration. But my love has always been to work with people with severe mental illnesses and working in the community with them, and working with case managers, having case management teams. That's always been where my heart is. But in 2018 is when I ran, and it was the first time that the current president was the president. And I didn't like the rhetoric that was coming out of D.C., and especially all of the hateful things that were being said about immigrants. My author is an immigrant from Mexico. At the end, it's because of him that I'm here. He was involved politically, and so it's like it's in my DNA, so to speak. So I kind of followed along in his footsteps in one sense. But it's always hearing his voice in my head saying, if you don't like what they're doing, change it. You can vote. You can vote them out. You can vote them in. He never said you can also run, because he didn't have that vision of saying just didn't want anybody that looked like me in office at the time. And so he didn't have that comparison that I did now that I'm an adult. And so I decided to run. I'm also a lesbian. And so being a Latina and a lesbian eco-social worker, I call it a lot of talents of that. And I've got coupled a lot of skills with that. And so that was really the reason, and I knew that my social work background would be an advantage. And it totally is an advantage in so many ways. You even had the whole day to even talk to you about those advantages, But yeah, it brings so much, because you bring your experience, you bring your own life experience, you bring your work experience, practical experience, whatever that might be. You bring that to the job, and this is a job. You're elected to do a job. So thanks.
Thank you. Can you tell us at least a few of the top priorities that you're trying to advance in the legislature using those social work talents that you have? What are you working on this year?
One really cool thing, and Heather could not be here with us today, but the three of us are on the Health and Human Services Committee, and we staff that committee with 3 social workers. And we also have a PhD nurse practitioner. And we have another member of our caucus, our Democratic caucus, who's just a fireball. And it's awesome to have her there. So we kind of stacked the committee. It was pretty purposeful for us to do that. And it has really worked. to be able to do that. So in health and human services, we get a lot of bills, but a lot of what we're trying to do is advance healthcare access in all its forms into Kansas. But I also, because my wife is from the rural western part of Kansas, and I know so many people out there now that 85% of the state is still rural and the frontier, and we need access to services out there too. So that's always one of my litmus tests for a bill. Whether I go for it or not is it going to expand access to the rural areas? We live in the 5 urban areas in Kansas. We've got lots of options that the folks up in the rural areas just aren't.
Also say it's a pleasure serving on the Health Committee with Representative Ruiz. So some of the things that I ran on and that I talk about a lot, I think, let me just kind of set the stage on the context here. So we are both Democrats. We're in the Democratic caucus. We are in the super minority, so it's quite hard to have votes to advance some of our pie in the sky things. But when I step back and I think about what that means, to me that means it's about talking about the issues in every chance you have and building the relationships, especially across the aisle, so that when the tides do turn a little bit in future elections, we will be ready with some of those relationships. So some of the things that I am most passionate about, I'd always worked in healthcare policy primarily, and particularly around Medicaid and Medicaid access. So I'm a huge proponent, obviously, of Medicaid expansion, and I talk about it every chance I can. It's probably more than many of my colleagues would like to hear across the aisle. But twice this year, I've been able to offer amendments on the House floor on different bills that would pave the way for Medicaid expansion. One was actually an amendment to offer Medicaid expansion. And I say, I did not know that that vote was going to fail and fail pretty badly. But what we needed every single member and House of Representatives on record as to where they stand, so that then the advocates can go out there and do their work in the community, because we know there are people who go back to their communities and say, I support that, and then when there's a vote on the floor, their vote doesn't reflect that. And until we have that vote on the floor, we can't hold them accountable in their communities. And so that's one thing. Another issue that I'm very passionate about is early childhood education and childcare access and affordability. So I have 2 young children. I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old. My family has 5 months of childcare payments left before we are totally into the public school system. And, my children are very fortunate because our family has always been able to afford very high quality, safe childcare, and they have reaped the benefits. And it just breaks my heart that we don't have that for every child in the state, and what that means not only for their education, but also for their family's economic options, either because a parent who would like to be in the workforce has to stay home, what that does to their economic options, and what that means for the family as well. So expanding access to childcare, although I will put a caveat on that, in a safe manner. I will not vote for major deregulation that allows a bunch of unlicensed, unregulated providers out there. And then also public education. So I really believe that public education is the bedrock of our democracy. And as we, the threats against public education, I think are much more than against public education, right? It's about increasing the divide between the haves and the have-nots. It's about taking away the opportunity of whatever semblance of a level playing field we can create with public education. I have a child in public schools. I see how hard those teachers are working. I see how hard the social workers are working in those schools. I see how great that school is and how much my child is learning and thriving. And it is really I could talk about this all day, how much I just firmly believe every single community in Kansas, every child in Kansas needs very strong public education. And without it, so many other things will suffer.
Wow, thank you. For the work they can do and for them being willing to share it with us here. What about for these social workers here? What is your advice for social workers doing advocacy in the legislature specifically? Although anyway, you two both have a varied array of commitments in advocacy spaces. in the Kansas legislature, what do you want to see from social workers?
Show up, be there in person, and then know many of you are going to go to the Captain's Day, and you're going to join up with a bunch of advocates for health care, and there's going to be huge numbers. That's what we need to see, are the numbers. We need to see our faces, and I'm speaking for all the other representatives, that going and finding out who your representative is, who your senator is, and going and trying to speak to them, and just to share with them who you are, why you do what you're doing, and the one important thing that you've been kind of taught to him. We don't see enough people in our committee bills because there is a lobby area, or call it the gallery, but it's where anybody can sit and watch us hear a bill or work a bill, and there aren't enough faces there. And there are some groups, they have T-shirts, and so we know exactly who they are. And we had Latino Day last week, and there were 160 Latinos, primarily all very young, like high school and sophomore age of college. That was awesome. And because of that, they pause a few bills because they know they're going to show up. And so this is part of just being there alone will really help us try to defeat very discriminatory type of bills. So that's my one and only ask, is that you find ways to come and be there at your committee. Come with your friends, come with your family. I told my Latino folks that we need the abuelitas, all the grandmas, to sit that front row, and pray the rosary or knit, whatever. Just drop them off in the morning, sit the committee, or because that speaks volumes, So it's that kind of presence is what we need in the Capitol.
Would be amazing. I would love to have grandmothers in our galleries watching us. So I echo everything that Representative Ruiz says, and I also want to reiterate something that Melinda said at her opening, is that accountability-specific asks. I think it can be, it can be intimidating. I hope it's not intimidating to come talk to us, but I understand that it can be, and I could keep always, we want to do things that are, right for people. Be really specific, whatever it is you want to talk about. We want Medicaid connection. We want you to respect everybody's basic human rights. We want you to support special education. Whatever it is, find something really specific and ask them where they stand on it. Don't just say, we want you to do it, some I know that I just said, but ask them, will you support this? What is your position on this? If it's uncomfortable for you, it's okay to make it a little uncomfortable for them too. They owe that to you. And if they can't give you a position, that can speak volumes in and of itself. So I would say that, and then I would say please show up to Connecticut Expansion Valley today in particular. And then after you go home today, show up in your communities when they have town halls or coffees, show up. When they have campaign events, show up. Sign up for their newsletters. Just make them know that you're just kind of always there. Send them an email in the middle of the summer that says, hey, I really hope when you come out in January, you'll prioritize, A, B, and C. That is their job. And then lastly, I'll say, if there is ever a piece of legislation that's having a hearing, you can't come to Topeka, all of those hearings are live streamed. And so you can still watch it. If you're a legislator on that committee, you can still see what they do and what they say, and they're reported, so you don't have to watch them you can watch them and I think it would be really powerful, if people said, hey, I went back and I watched that, Terry, and I disagree with what you said on this, or I really agree with what you said with this. Just let them know we're watching.
Thank you. No, I mean, so many important things there. I think saying thank you, I try to do that a lot when I have, particularly, somebody who showed up in a way that surprised me on a particular vote. And I often, almost always, get responses to those because they appreciate being thanked. And I love what you said, Suzanne, about be okay with making people uncomfortable. I think that's a superpower of social workers. I don't know if that's what you meant, Professor Release, about your talents. Like, we have uncomfortable conversation on the regular, right? I mean, that's not like a new thing. When you are having to work with a client about something that they're really struggling with, or you're dealing with conflicts with their organizations, like, we do not necessarily regularly shy away entirely from discomfort. So yeah, it couldn't be awkward, but awkward, it doesn't hurt. It's just awkward. Anything else that either of you want students and other social workers in this space to hear from you in this moment, this year, this line?
There are times when we have to look, along with the PSRB, to look at licensure. And all it takes in order to get a license, and it doesn't matter at what level, we need to hear from you. If there's anything that the legislature can do, there's some efforts across the country to lessen some of the requirements. And there's only so much that you want to do with that, because then then you start crossing over to, we have to be held to a certain level, and that we do no harm. And so there are times when we do have to look at that. There's a push to have universal licensure, and this is happening in other states. It's not gotten here yet, but I'm sure it'll come. We need to know, because you are the future of our profession, and yes, the profession needs to grow. It absolutely has to grow, and it's a dynamic profession. But when did we cross the line? And we need to know that from you, because those bills at times will come through Health and Human Services. It's been a couple of years since Becky passed and I worked on mine. But they will come, and we absolutely have to hear you, because the BSRB to say, well, this is what social workers want. So I haven't heard that. So absolutely, we have got to hear from you, whether you think it's a good idea, you think it's a bad idea. If you want to see some changes, let us know what those changes are. Cannot guarantee that we'll do those, but we need to be informed. I'm not out practicing every single day in the legislature, so I don't know what it's like to be a student anymore. I was a student back in '93, so we need to hear from.
My plea would be that for those of you, I assume the vast majority of you will be in some sort of clinical setting versus an advocacy setting, is to never forget how much the policy and advocacy work impacts your work. So whether you're at a community health center and you can't hire enough social workers or other providers, that's because the state has not allocated enough volume. That's a policy decision. If you're working with a client who can't access medical care, that was a policy decision that the state is making. If you're working with somebody who, can't access housing, there are policy decisions around it. So my plea to you is that as you go into your careers, or as you continue in your careers, to stay engaged on a political level. And I know that got you very getting up on your capacity, but to understand that the decisions made at Topeka and DC, but in many ways more so in Topeka, have those effects on your clients that you're trying to help them manage and navigate, and how important that is. And then, if I may be a little hurried, I brought a copy of the Social Worker Code of Ethics with me, which I went back and I read right before I took office. And I just want to read one paragraph out of the section on social and political action. says social workers should be engaged in social and political action that seeks to ensure that all people have equal access to the resources, employment, services, and opportunities they require to meet their basic human needs and to develop fully. Social workers should be aware of the impact of the political arena on practice and should advocate for changes in policy and legislation to improve social conditions to meet basic human needs and promote social justice.
Amongst this, to also say when you are speaking with other legislators, you know more about the topic than they do. Just think of that, okay? So that education piece is extremely important, that if you can just educate them a little bit on the topic, they carry that through, you know, and they can hold on to that. So, and it's a lot of what we do as debate is really educating the rest of the debate members about a certain topic or a certain bill they're behind. So yeah, just keep that in mind, you know more that they get back top.
Thank you both so much for being here this morning and even more for what you're going to do this afternoon and tomorrow and the next day. We're in the march for social work and for the full judges. So thank you so much. All right. Hopefully you wrote something down on your list there or your piece of paper. This is what I would say today, or this the passion, or something to continue to pursue with what they said. Pretty powerful information. And you're going to the Happening today. They will be there, so it'd be great to get to see them, sit down again, follow up on something that he had questions of curiosity about. So make sure to present on with this as well. So to keep the excitement, we're going to be having one of the most animated, fun social work you can come across. And that's going to be a love getting to be around her, see her. If you'll notice on the schedule for today, she has a lot of credentials. She's a licensed specialist political social work. And then is how you say all the other acronyms that I can't pronounce, but just wonders. There are a lot of letters. And so it's great to check that out, what her specialty is. So Miss Felicia Blas, she does private practice therapy, and she specializes in excellence with grief and loss. And she's also a Kansas chapter board on our ethics chair. They got a lovely library by give me some.
It is so firm up. And let me tell y'all something. I am on 10 all month long. Right? I'm posting pictures. I'm talking about what an amazing social worker I am. I'm talking about treat your social worker to some coffee, a snack, an Amazon card, and something, right? Because the work that we do is amazing. And with that said, I want you to know that it's so important that you are members of NASA. How many of you know about being a member of NASA? Raise your hands. So that means there's a whole bunch of you who don't know about being a member of NASW. So that's why I'm here. I'm a commercial grade, really. Okay. So I enjoy coming to talk about being a member of NASW for several reasons. One, I could see all the beautiful faces. Most importantly, you get to see my beautiful face. And then lastly, I get to talk to you a little bit about why being a member is so important. So you all know there's an all-out attack on humanity. I got it, Carrie. There's an all-out attack on humanity.
Yes.
And you're the people who are charged with treating and caring for all people to maintain humanity, right? Right. Do you know that?
Yes.
If you didn't know, you know now. Yes, you. That's my girl right there. That's my girl. All right, so you are charged with maintaining humanity in this country for all people. And because you are charged with that duty, there are going to be people who don't want to see you do your job. NASW is the protector of you being able to do your job. So they are where we go to get the most recent research and legal coverage to do the work that we do. So they are the ones who are going to tell us how we can adequately and above board, of course my phone will be ringing, above board care for people that the legislature, our people in making rules and making laws right now, are saying that you can't. And I want you to know that we're getting ready to tread in some territories that we have not treaded in before in being able to meet the needs of all people. Y'all catch the key word? What's the key word? All. What is it? All. Who? All. That means the person sitting next to you. That means your neighbor. That means the people that you aren't even speaking to, them too. And because we're walking into an uncharted territory, it is very important that you are protected. And I'm here to encourage you to become members of NASW now while you're students, because it's cheaper. For you right now, that fee is like $60. When you are grown up grown and working in the field and making a little bit more money, and I do mean a little bit, it looks more like 200 or something, because you're not going to add your specialties and stuff, right? So right now is the time for you to become members, so that as you enter into the field and you're working under supervision of someone else, if you have questions about what to do, how to do, where to do, and you want to know the legal components of it, you want to be able to get access to that now. In addition, you have to pay for CEs once you graduate. And with being a member of NASW, you get access to some of those things for free. Having a specialty gives me some of those things for free also, which means I don't have to pay for it out of pocket with someone else. Now, you heard Amherst mention all those letters behind my name, and there are more than that. They just put a few of them, right? There are actually about 34 letters behind my name. And the reason why that is because we have to get CEs. And my theory is, if I have to pay to get these extra hours, those hours in return need to pay me. Y'all get it? Yeah. Oh, your girl smart. All right. The reality is that everybody is not out here throwing money at your feet as social workers. But there are these things, those letters behind your name are called back pocket items. Those are things that you specialize in, that because you specialize in them, someone's going to call on you because someone else isn't doing those things. That's what those 36 letters are behind my name. So I'm here to tell you that being a social worker is not what you do. Being a social worker is who you are. Say it for me. Social work is who you are. Social work is who you are. And because it's who you are, you need to know that you need legal protections, because who you are is dangerous. Oh, y'all didn't understand. Who you are is dangerous, right? You're someone who is going to dip and down with people's personal lives. People are going to talk to you about their life. They're going to talk to you about their money. They're going to talk to you about their children. They're going to talk to you about their marriages and their sex lives. In addition to that, they're going to talk to you about how they want to end their life. And all of those things have risk. And with that risk means you need attorneys. That means you need people who are guiding you. You need an ethics board. You need an ethics board who's not out for punishment, but is out for correction. And the National Ethics Board is there for correction. They're there to teach you how to be better at being good, right? See, I tell people all the time, I just introduced myself to a young lady in the hallway, and I said, I'm a grief counselor. I said, no correction. I am the grief counselor. It's important that you know that there are lots of other professions out there who claim to be the best, but they all are offsprings of us. And because they are the offspring of us, that means we have to stand a little bit taller and wear our mantle a little bit higher so that they understand where the bar really is. We are the bar. And you can't be a part of the bar if you're not a part of the protection that is needed to maintain the standard of excellence, which is social work. We are the bar. Let me hear you say it. We are the bar. Say it like you mean. You're the bar. Yeah. but it is who you are. Everywhere you go, you are a social worker. That means when you're hanging out with your friends, they kicking it, you're still a social worker. When you're hanging out with your family and they're doing stuff that you know ain't right, you're still a social worker. And because there are times where people like to throw you under the bus, you want to make sure you're covered, right? I can remember my first situation with the morgue. It's my only situation too. Let me clear it up. All right. My first situation with the morgue was someone accused me of practicing independently without supervision, and I had to answer to the board. They sent me a letter. I read the letter, and I laughed because the same person that made the complaint was the same person whose name was on the dotted line that said I was practicing independently and my supervisor's name is. Right? So I just sent the letter back and it was done. But let me tell you, there are allegations that are made against social workers where they are found guilty and they lose their license. There are allegations that are made against social workers where they are literally paying for clinical supervision for a year to resolve that issue. I've had people pay me for clinical supervision for 1 year corrections to the tune of about $5,000, $5,200, because to see me one time a week, it's going to cost you $100 an hour. And that's me being nice because you're a social worker. Right? But, because I'm about my coins too. Right? But it's important that you know that you have an obligation and a responsibility to protect the thousands of dollars that you and the scholarship owners who have put you in these seats, that you protect their dollars and your future. So, say it with me one more time. Social work is not what I do. It's not what I do. It's who I am. Social work is what? Say it like you mean it. So, you get this beautiful little blue cord to wear in graduation when you sign up outside in the hallway to be a member of an ASW. You also get this cute little bag. Y'all see this bag? So y'all not saying like to me. So you're gonna have free stuff. So I want you to enjoy your free stuff, but the most important piece is that get protected. Join in ASW today and get protected because social work is who I am. Y'all have a good day.
So we are going to get started. Looks like the people have their seats already. To kick off the day, we have our Kansas chapter Vice President Amber Jewell to do the welcome.
All right, well, welcome everybody. It's a beautiful sunny day out, isn't it? A great breakfast, coffee, water, everybody get your good stuff. Nobody, if you haven't yet, this is cussy. Good. For the whole day. I'm thrilled to get to see so many social workers, brothers and sisters, and friends in the profession that we love. It's also a great day to get to celebrate NASW Kansas chapter 50 years of service to this profession and the clients that we serve. I think there's an applause to 50 years of Each year, this Social Work Advocacy Day is the largest annual gathering of social workers all across Kansas. This is a pretty big deal to get to do this. It's a great event for all of us as pretty great people and an awesome profession. So of course we want to make sure and thank the sponsors to make this a great option with good food. So them being here, I want to make sure I recognize them. We do have the raffle today. They are at the end of the breakfast lines. Grab a raffle ticket, take it around to the different tables and get your ticket on it, and then we will have a raffle during break. So please try to do that during the break time, and then we will do the raffle. So for the sponsors and the Kansas Council of Social Work Educators, they're what make this possible. Let's make sure and give them each an applause as we talk about who they are. If you could stand up, if you have a booth here, there is one out front. KBC. Declan.
Cornerstone of Care. Kansas Department of Children and Family. Children's Alliance. Association of Mental Health. Prairie View Mental Health Center. So make sure that you check out the booths and the one out front, get them all on your raffles, check out their information, get their things to take home, and share with the people that you continue to serve in your communities. So the next thing that we need to do is make sure and give a huge shout out to people who are in the Kansas chapter and the board of directors who organize this each year, particularly Becky Bass, who sets this up, but also the crew of the Kansas Board of Directors for your service. So if you are on the Kansas Board of Directors, please raise your hand. Yes. I think they're low. I'm sure they're raising a can with gleefulness because they don't do it in front of everybody else. But make sure to tell them thank you for being the voice through advocacy for our profession across the state. I appreciate it. So last but not least, the people that we want to make sure and give gratitude are well, you guys, right? You should get excited about that. We're excited you're here. You're the people who get to bring the advocacy into action across the state, and particularly here in the Capitol. So we want to make sure and recognize those who are represented here today. So as I say the name of the university, college, just stand up, cheer, let us know that you're here. We want to recognize your ability to name the loud place. All right? Washburn University. Bethel College. Wichita State. Union University. Just pretend. K-State University. Pittsburgh State. Kansas University. KSU Wildcats. Kansas Wesleyan. Taylor's College. So hopefully we could have some social workers come and represent them next year. This isn't on the list, but I also want to make sure social work professionals, alumni, professors, all of that, give them an applause real quick for working. So you all who are here, we need your help in social media being able to promote our profession of social work. We really want you to spread the word as we post things today on our website, as you experience things at this event at the Capitol. Make sure that you share that, tag people, tag friends, and really show the action of social work across our state and our nation. It's important for you to be that voice on your social media. So spread the word on your channels. And we want to make sure and do a video real quick that was to celebrate Social Work Month. Previous years, we had a lot of people do some interviews and some videos. And so from previous years of this is how we created this video that we want to share with you. And as you're watching, I can say, I want to do that. Thank you.
Hi everyone, can you hear me all right? Okay, wonderful. I just want to say I'm thrilled to be here today. You all are our future of doing this work and ensuring that everyone has what they need. And that's exactly what we want to see at Kansas Advocacy. So thank you for being here. I'm going to try and be as brief as possible because I know that we have a rally to get to that I'm very excited about. My name is Haley Koppler. I am a campaign director at Kansas Advocacy. Like she said, I oversee all of our anti-hunger initiatives. Mostly we work on SNAP food assistance, and as well as child nutrition programs like universal meal programs in schools. Today I'm going to talk to you all about a really exciting endeavor in front of the legislature right now that Governor Kelly announced in her State of the State. And Becky, I think we can go to 2 slides. So for Kansas Appleseed's campaign initiatives, we have several things. One is to ensure all Kansas kids have what they need to thrive by supporting child nutrition programs. Additionally, we promote the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program and fight for policy solutions and legislation that ensures more Kansans can thrive. I have been working a lot in front of the legislature this year. Unfortunately, we have a lot of really harmful bills around SNAP food assistance. However, we also have a really incredible endeavor around the reduced price meal copay. You can go to the next slide. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what food insecurity looks like in Kansas. Food insecurity is the lack of consistent access to food to live a healthy, active life. What we know is that 1 in 8 Kansas adults and 1 in 5 Kansas kids are facing food insecurity and going. In some areas of the state, that's 1 in 4 Kansas kids. That's mostly in Southeast Kansas and Southwest Kansas. My family's from Iola. Doesn't even know where that's at. Yeah. Allen County, yeah. Unfortunately, Allen County and Woodson County have some of the highest child poverty rates in Kansas, and we are working to end that. Next slide, please. So what's the current landscape of school meal access in Kansas? I'll talk a little bit about the community eligibility provision. That's 50,000 kids are benefiting from this. So this is a universal free meal program that allows high poverty students to receive free meals regardless of their ability to pay. My colleague Jessica Kerr is here today. She just started a few months ago, and she's going to be leading our efforts on this with Kansas schools. So we're really excited about that, and I'd love to see folks after this if you are interested in learning more. Right now, about 200,000 students across Kansas receive free meals, and 36,000 children are eligible for reduced price meals. Unfortunately, they're still facing costs, and that's, I think, it's about 70 cents per K. We do have a potential opportunity this legislative session to eliminate reduced price copays. If you go to the next slide. So in Governor Kelly's State of the State for this year, she talked about, she put in her budget to cover reduced price meals for Kansas kids. This would mean that 36,000 kids across the state who come from homes of poverty, but their guardians and parents still have to pay that 70 cents per meal, they would then have access to free meals. This would be a huge, huge help to Kansas kids. Was anyone still in high school during the pandemic? Yeah, some. Man, I'm old. You likely remember that during COVID, there were universal free meals. What we saw with this universal free meal program was really, really incredible results. We know that feeding kids at school for free is a huge, huge impact. So the governor put this in her budget. What does that mean? In a normal year, it would mean that it might sail right through. It may have some hardships, but this year it's a little more difficult. So this year, for the first time, the governor has her own budget and the legislature has their own budget. And so we've been faced with some tough choices, but I would say we've been having very good conversations around this reduced price meal copay. I know several of my colleagues are going to be talking about this a little later. We'd love for you all to have conversations with your legislators regarding this. Next slide, please. Also wanted to talk a little about why we feel this is the right call on eliminating the reduced price meal copay. Anyone in the room who knows Kansas Appleseed knows that we would really like Kansas to get back to universal free meals. We'd love the whole nation to get back to universal free meals. Unfortunately, the political climate that we're in right now, it's going to be very tricky. So we have looked at other states. We've been working with partners across the nation to see what have they been doing to really put together those pieces to eventually get universal free meals in the future. And many of the states who are doing universal free meals now, 10, 12, 15 years ago, planted the seed on eliminating the reduced price copay. So we really felt that this was a targeted approach for high needs families now, that we can get them that access, and in the future we can continue to chip away to allow that long-term universal equal access. Next slide, please. A little more about the reduced price meal copay, elimination copay. There are so many benefits to this, and I know that everyone in this room likely already knows these, but one, reduced stigma, increased participation when meals are free is really critical. Kansas Advocacy over the last few years has looked at meal debt policies across the state. That's been coming up time and time again. I remember a story from the end of that universal meal program after COVID, and it was end of August, early September, and I got a phone call from a mom, and she had a high school student who played football. Well, we know August and September in Kansas, right? It is hot. And he didn't have lunch money on he had meal debt, and so they did not allow him to have the same meal as everyone else. And they gave him something like a little box of cereal and a milk, something really that was not enough sustenance for a linebacker going to play football right after school. And this mom, I'll never forget this, it was really transformative to me. This mom called me to see how she could step up and work with her school board or her lawmakers to ensure that no other kids have to face the embarrassment that her child did, but also the lack of nutritional needs that he needed to play football after school. Next slide. So what we're asking today and what our path forward for feeding more Kansas kids is one, to engage policymakers to prioritize school meal funding. We love, as you all are having those meetings today, to talk about this proposal and to just talk about the need for school meals overall. School meals don't just benefit that kid, right? They also benefit the whole family. When there's more room in a food budget, there's more room to pay a car payment or rent or utilities. Everything is extremely expensive for families now, and this is just one more thing that we can do for our families to open up their budget. We also ask, as you all go out into the world, to collaborate with local communities and organizations, which you're already doing, to really leverage these programs and explore more how we can all work together. Next slide. I touched on this a little bit ago, but really our short term is that funding the copay for reduced price meals. That's the now, the immediate need. But of course, we'll be advocating for universal free meals statewide. We really believe that chipping away on this is the path forward. I did want to use an example from Arkansas, and they implemented a similar policy 2 years ago with really no significant fiscal impacts. However, with their governor, does anyone remember Sarah Huckabee Sanders? She's now the governor of Arkansas. She championed this proposal. She championed eliminating the reduced price meal copay, and they signed it. And guess what? In her State of the State this year, she called for universal free breakfast in Arkansas, and she just signed that bill 2 weeks ago. So we know, come on, if Arkansas can do it, why can't Kansas? So we know this works, right? This isn't some very off-the-wall proposal. This is very pragmatic. And again, if Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders believes that it can be done and it can, then Kansas can do it as well. Next slide. So I think that's it for me today. If anyone has any questions, this is my contact information up on this slide. Becky, I will remember to say, Kansas Advocacy works on a ton of different issues, not just food security. We're also working on juvenile and criminal justice, as well as the foster care crisis in Kansas. The best way to stay up to date with us is to get our weekly emails. I won't toot my own horn, but they're pretty good, and we feel our executive director does a very, very good job on really making this the legislative process as accessible as possible to folks. So we'd love for you all to join our email list. You can find that on our website. We also have a text list that will share information out as well. If there's ever a sign-on letter or an action alert for you all to reach out to your legislators, both in the State House or congressional delegation. There's just FYI, there's some battles on school meals coming up federally as well that we're prepared for. We'd love for you all to stay engaged. And I think that's it for me. Thank you all so much for your time, and I'll be around after this if you have any questions.
All right, that was wonderful. Kansas Appleseed is something that I participate a lot on as a social worker whenever I was in your shoes, got involved in it. And it's really something in the world of advocacy that you get to do and serve on a lot of membership organizations and feel like you have a voice on that influence. So definitely the website and getting at the emails. All right. The next thing we're going to be looking at is expanding access to school-based and crisis mental health care supports. That's going to go right along with what we were just discussing. So I'd love to introduce Ms. Susan to talk about this conversation.
Good morning. I'm so glad to be here today. It's great to see so many people that are out here today. I'm Susan Brome. I'm with the Association of Community Mental Health Centers of Kansas. So our association members are the 26 community mental health centers that are also certified behavioral health centers as well, which is the U terminology you might not be familiar with. We support those members across the state through advocacy and policy work. In some respects, we're kind of a go-between from the mental health center and the state government. So we try to do a wide variety to help in their efforts that are working directly with clients. Prior to coming to the association, I worked at a community mental health center for a number of years in clinical and administrative roles. Happy to be here today. Becky, I think I'll have you go forward one more. We already talked a lot about advocacy today, so I'll just repeat things, and that was great information. So I'm going to jump right into a little bit about social work in schools. There's some things kind of going on in our legislature that will cover this morning. So there's a lot of different areas, as you know, that you can work as social workers, and one of those is in schools. Those can be a wide variety of things. So that can be working with mental health services, behavioral challenges, social development, collaborating with teachers, parents, administration, looking at how you can help the different environment for a particular kid or for a group, all kinds of different things that can be helpful as a school social worker. In terms of advocacy efforts in schools, that could include promoting policies around mental health services, addressing systemic issues. So if you think anything about like bullying, equity in education, access to resources that kids might need. Certainly the NEALS is a great example of that. In engaging with community stakeholders to enhance support systems. So I want to talk about one of those support systems next. So I know we're kind of throwing a lot at you today about what's happening in the legislature. This is one of those great talking points if you have the opportunity. So mental health intervention teams, we call it MHIT. These are partnerships with the mental health centers, the local mental health centers, and the school districts in the area. Not every school district has an MHIT team. This is a relatively new program that's happening across the state. It basically allows for mental health services to be provided in the school. And some of the work is liaisoning. So a social worker, for example, would be at the school and maybe that kiddo needs a more wider array of services. So there would be a referral to a mental health center for some additional services. But by having those folks in the school, that reduces some of the barriers that families might have to accessing services. So things like transportation, taking time off work, and those kind of things that sometimes reduce the possibility of a kid getting the mental health services that they need. So that the school district actually employs the liaisons who help identify the kids that have the mental health challenges or different needs and again, direct it to those resources. We are seeing great outcomes, particularly with kids not missing school so much and that sort of thing. Academics and behavior, performance, all are improving. Last year, there were 7,000 students that were essentially touched by this program, and 600 of those students were kids who are in foster care. So super important in accessing services. So in relationship to the legislature, MHIT is funded through the states, but it's funded on an annual basis. What they're trying to do this year is to get it codified in the budget, and what that means is it's just prepare. And so it's been a challenge for the health centers and schools to not really know, is the funding going to continue year to year? So you're sort of in limbo, particularly over the summertime when you're waiting for budgets to be finalized. So that is House Bill 2236. It passed in the House Health and Human Services that our legislatures were talking about for. So it needs to go then to the full House and then to the Senate for that to become official. So that's something that you think about today. MHIT, just saying that, I support the mental health intervention teams, and I look forward to that funding to continue. So we would appreciate that very much, and a really important program. The next one I want to talk about is shifting gears a little bit. How many of you have heard of 98? Yay, some vegans, awesome. So 98 is a crisis helpline. It's not specific to a suicide hotline, but can be used for that purpose. But it's this very broad program that's national. We have, well, I should have counted this before I came. I think there's 4 or maybe 5 call centers throughout the state that takes calls from all over the state. Right now, we have great statistics on getting those calls answered very quickly. When a call is answered locally, it bounces to a national line just to make sure there's always someone who's getting that call very quickly. So we need funding to continue to would on the infrastructure. So if you think of like the 911 system, it takes a lot of work for even like the technology piece of things to get it going. Particularly moving on to text and chat exists in some places, but not a whole lot locally, yes. But many of you probably, and I certainly know for my teenagers, they don't call, right? That's okay. So we want to make sure we have that great system set in place. So that is really helpful. And then thinking of MA and how you might consider that as a part of your line of work. It's tough work. I've done that work, and it's very rewarding. So I'm very fast paced, providing that crisis intervention and emotional support, doing referrals for follow-up care. And as you all know, there's just varying degrees of crisis. So what is someone's crisis to them might be different than what it is to you. So there's a really big gamut of calls that are received, and that the work that you would do helps with. So again, the federal funding that's helping with 98 is very essential, but we also need that state funding to help. So the passage of Senate Bill 19 in 2022 helped create kind of this foundation that we have in our state right now. So we just watch that continue, so that we have that ongoing and sustainable funding to continue to grow those networks across the state. Alrighty, next slide. Yeah, one more. Thank you. Just a couple of things to think about in working with schools for 90-day, some skills for success. Obviously, communication, you probably heard that, many times, regardless of the point year you are in school, right? Communication is very key, and the social workers likely you kind of have a knack for that. Helping with people, connecting with people, and maybe that's part of why you got into this profession in the first place. Maybe someone said you work well with people, and maybe this is a good route for you. So again, just emphasizing that's super important. The crisis intervention techniques, those are not things that you have to start the job with day one, right? There's retraining. 988 has some amazing training programs that they put their staff through. There even are so many opportunities for you locally to volunteer in those kind of agencies and learn what some of that work is like, or maybe shadow if you have an opportunity is a great way to get exposed to that work. Obviously, the advocacy and policy knowledge, and then of course, a skill for all of us that's super important is that cultural competency and the debate. Okay, next slide. Be this last one, or almost last one. A couple just different things I wanted to point out as you're thinking to get an employment opportunities. So we talked about school-based care. That could be special education, advocacy program coordinators for students and different well-being programs. More on the crisis route, so a crisis counselor. That can be, and sometimes those are people who are working fully from home, and that's something that's appealing to you. Case management and follow-up services. Was any of you here working currently or doing a practice down in the community laws? Awesome. So you're kind of exposed to what that word is like. And then that cross policy program development roles can also be awarded that crisis intervention. So lastly, just some of those pathways to employment, it probably are a few of those kind of stuff. So, those internships, anytime you can do a job shadow, even there's a lot of agencies that, are willing to have you come for a day or spend at least some time getting to know what their work is like so that if it's a place that you might like to be employed. There's certainly networking with other professionals like you're doing today. Getting relevant certifications and trainings as you go. Getting that license when you're able to do that is really important piece. So that is it for me. Thank you so much for listening and for being here today. And I'll leave afterwards as well as answer any questions that thank you.
Okay. So we want to give you some opportunities to see what this advocacy process can look like, including that ask that you heard me talk about, why it's so important to have a specific ask, and then Suzanne said it too. And so this is an opportunity, we hope, for you to see what it can look like, and then you be able to be ready to do some of the practice perhaps before you head over to the Capitol, or certainly to have your own advocacy interactions when you get there. So I know that you're social workers, you have done role plays before, but maybe not advocacy role plays, and so we're going to try to demonstrate one of those to you and just use these so that we can be heard. So Lisa is going to be a legislator, a few different ones actually. One of them is going to be really friendly and supportive. Maybe it's like my own senator, appreciate him so much, or maybe just somebody who likes me. Then she's also going to be a more hostile legislator, which does not mean you're going to come to blows, but certainly she's not going to receive it all that well. And then you're going to play like a kind of skeptical but potentially open legislator, right? Right, which is what social workers often encounter. So we're going to try to demonstrate what that can look like. And we'll admit it's not entirely rehearsed, because that's on purpose too, because we want to demonstrate that even if the interaction doesn't go exactly as you had planned and hoped, that does not mean it was a wasted effort, nor is it irredeemable. So. And thank goodness for not irredeemable, right, Lisa? I need that in my life. Okay.
Right? I'm ready. Okay. Can't hear myself. Can you just hear?
Right. So hi, I'm Melinda Lewis. I'm a social worker and your constituent. I don't know if we have met in person before, but I'm glad to see you here today. Glad you're here. So I want to talk about child hunger and child nutrition. We know that access to affordable, healthy meals in school makes a difference. It improves academic outcomes, reduces behavioral problems, and improves kids' overall well-being. So can we count on you, can I count on you to fund family co-pays for those receiving reduced price federal meals?
Of course, support reducing student hunger. So do you know it was passed other committees?
I don't have all the information. I think it was announced in the governor's budget, but I can connect you with Kansas Appleseed, and they can give you the information that you need to know when you can support it.
Okay, great. Well, when I see come on, Lord, you've got myself. Thanks so much.
And it happens every once in a while.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, like I said, my personal senator, I have great conversations with him on a really regular basis, including on one Saturday a month, he hosts a coffee and donuts. I just don't really like donuts that much, but I'll eat Senator Corsi's coffee, all the time. So almost every month, I go to one of those and see mostly about the same 45, 50 people. Becky is there often in her role as a commissioner, because Senator Corsi convenes only him, but those who represent other layers of government in our community. And yeah, when I ask for things, for the most part, he says yes. Or the times that he doesn't, it's still a door left open about something that he's going to look at, or additional information that he wants from me. So yeah, it totally happens.
The latest relations with Courtney just had a bill, the big whoever was the child sexual abuse, and this bill popped up. We didn't know what it was. We did it, and I was able to contact. He's nice. We have the same center. Reached out to him, and he was able to find some information, lead me to the person I need to talk to, and it made it, so all those relationships work.
Yeah. No, like I said, I'm not trying to talk just about him all the time, although if you live near me, let me introduce you. But I also sometimes contact him when I already know. For example, the bill that just passed that shortened the period for receiving mail-in ballots in order to get them counted. He has supported voting rights reliably as a leader. It's not that I needed to contact him to get him to support or to support my position to reject that bill. I wanted him to be able to tell his colleagues, I'm hearing from my constituents. They care about this issue. I've got a college student now and soon to have 3 more college students. I want them to be able to vote by mail in the districts that they want to participate in. And so I told him that story and said, please use this story when you are talking with colleagues about this issue. I wasn't trying to persuade him on that goal in that interaction. It's equipping him with such information that he could use. But they're not all like that, Lisa. So now we're going to do another one. You ready? Okay. So hi, I'm a social worker. I'm working with an organization that works on children's health, and I wanted to talk with you about school meals. We know that having access to affordable, healthy meals improves children's educational outcomes, reduces behavioral issues. It's really better for kids' intellectual, educational well-being, and their physical and mental well-being to have access to a healthy, affordable meal. Can we come up, and I count on you to support to fund the co-pay portion for families that are receiving reduced price lunch.
Well, I'm not really sure why the state has to just apply everything for families. Can't the parents just make peanut butter sandwiches for them? Because that's what we did when I was a kid.
So we know that some families are preparing meals for their kids at home, but that meals that are provided at school are specifically calibrated to meet a kid's nutritional needs. This is not free from the state to the school child entirely. The kids are already receiving a portion of their meal from the federal government. This is a cost-efficient way for the state to just facilitate access to that federal support.
I will just have to think about that. I may need to check on leadership and see how they're.
Thank you for the conversation. Good. Okay. Ready again? We got one more. Okay. Hi, so I'm Melinda. I am a social worker working with the Children's Health Organization, and I want to talk with you about free and reduced lunch and the opportunity that Kansas has to facilitate access to affordable, healthy meals for kids by just taking care of the family co-pay portion that can keep kids from getting the nutrition that they need. We know that research demonstrates that 3 healthy school meals improve children's mental and physical health, reducing childhood obesity, depression, and anxiety while improving their educational outcomes. And every $2 invested in school meals realizes an outsized return of investment from the way that we're able to prevent other problems that kids face. So with that cost-efficient, low administrative overhead solution, can I count on you to fund the family co-pay portion of reduced price federal meals?
Well, I do hear from my constituents that it's harder than ever to afford their groceries, especially if you have a long way to drive there to get to the store. But I'm not sure if I like the ideas of getting some families getting food for free. But tell me what you mean about this bill to reduce the administrative costs.
Yeah, so because the free and reduced lunch meal program is a federal initiative, the administrative cost for the state of Kansas is really low. That means that we can connect families to this federal resource without very much of our outlay invested. That's the reason that states like Arkansas are taking this initiative, because we know that inflation is high, food is unaffordable, and it's rural communities like yours, Representative, that have the most significant issue with child's food insecurity.
Well, I would sure like to be able to help my real family myself. I will have to look more into this.
Thank you so much.
Next up, I believe it is Miss Becky Bass back up for Oscar and Girl. She's going to do closing, and people will be doing the rap culture state. So it is it's always very important to speak up and be a voice for those that we serve, our clients, our communities. And what Kansas chapter does, by being a member, we're the voice of the profession. And social workers have a bifurcated mission and values, where we're a voice for the profession, but our value system is also a voice for communities, for our clients. Many professionals only did it a professional obligation to those in the profession. So in 1974, licensure began in Kansas, and I'd like to brag about this because we were one of the first states in the nation to have licensure. And while we were the first state in the nation, because social workers in Kansas joined together and went to the legislature. And at that time, we passed 3 levels of licensure. Missouri did pass 3 levels of licensure probably about 20 years ago. So we were one of the first states in having that. And so what was really the story last year is that we led again in passing the compact license. When Kansas passed it, you were the 7th state in the nation, and the Compact Commission formed. So social workers across the nation were saying, yay, Kansas, you led the way, Kansas, because that started the conversations of states who had passed the bill to be in this Compact Commission. And that's the photo with Governor Kelly. So where we are now with the social work licensing compact is 22 states have passed it. And as you can see in the light group, there's many more states that's pending. Oklahoma introduced the bill 2 weeks ago. And so I've heard nationally we are one of the fastest moving compacts. Others, professions, has taken years. So 22 states passed it in 1 year. And look at how many states have it moving this year. And so what that will mean for you is that when you go to get a license, it will probably take another year or two to implement it. You can go to Kansas BSRB, which is our licensing board, and say and choose, do I want a single state license or do I want a multi-state license? And so right now, like social workers that I talked at Pittsburgh, many who live in the Kansas City metro area, they have the Missouri and Kansas license. People in Southeast Kansas have an Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri license. That is very expensive. And many social workers now are doing telehealth. So the states that join the compact, when you get that multi-state license, you could practice in all those states in the compact. And as you can see, it will probably be the majority of states in the country, which doesn't happen in a lot of other compacts.
So Kansas chapter, by being a member, you help to have myself, my board of directors, he does a lot of volunteer work at the Capitol. If you don't have a voice at the Capitol, there's that old saying, if you're not at the table, you're on the venue. And so by being a member, you help support of having a voice in the Capitol. Last year, we had more members, so we could afford some hours each week from a lobbyist. That is huge to have someone in the Capitol all the time, because I couldn't be there all the time. And to be watching and informing us what's happening. Because often they'll have a bill that will have a hearing and you get a day's notice. There's not a lot of time to act when there's a hearing. So this year, we're continuing to advocate for the mental health and intervention team. That was as a pilot, and we wanted to get that into state statutes, so that has annual funding. Over 90 schools now are in the mental health intervention team, over 200 community-based liaisons. So it's been a very successful pilot. So a new bill this year that lawyers came to us, and the public defense lawyers, Kansas Legal Aid or Kansas Defense Legal Aid, and said, we would like to have more social workers at our law offices. And we're like, wow, that's really exciting that lawyers are saying, if I could hire a social worker, I can meet more of my clients who, by becoming out of jail, they're possibly having a hearing to help them with their social and emotional needs and support needs. But the one issue with that is social workers have a different level of confidentiality than attorneys. So this bill gives a narrow exception so that when you work with clients who are in the court system, in the jail, criminal justice system, that you can have the same attorney-client privilege as the attorney. So I really did think it would move, because a lot of things are not moving, but a number of social workers, there's a social worker who works from the Midwest Innocent Project, they work to get people who've been wrongly convicted out of jail. Her testimony was so compelling. And then another social worker who works for the Federal Public Defender's Office said how they can help, but this change would help them hire more attorneys. The Senate Committee on Judiciary was so, it was just such thoughtful and compelling testimony. It flew out of the Senate Judiciary Committee because of the social workers. That thing went to the full Senate, 40-0. I was just 40-0. That's like winning the lottery. And so, it was just incredible, the support that we had for increasing access to social workers in the criminal justice system. And now on Monday at a hearing in the House Judiciary Committee, I'm hoping it gets worked, and then it would go to the full House. So that is exciting. The other exciting thing is this year, an advocate worked in Health Services Scholarship. We worked at the Kansas Hospital Association. There's a nursing scholarship program, but there isn't for other supportive professions that work in medical care, work at hospitals, clinics. And so this would add BSW and MSWs to the state-funded scholarship program. We still have next year, into a 2-year session. And so the other thing we testified is pay crap tickets. How many of you applied to pay crap tickets? So I will give credits to Team DCS. A number of years ago, we went to Governor Kelly and DCS could there be K practicums at DCS. It has been a huge successful program. Over 100 students. Are any of you at the practicum student at DCS? Yes, me too. And so that program was Governor Kelly's first initiative, and then we continue to give that funded every year. But we wanted KDAS to fund our state hospitals or funding for our community health, mental health centers. And the legislature said, we need more social workers, we need more mental health providers. Well, you need to help us help you. And so we need to continue to advocate, because this is a huge step that we even have a bill and a guide. And it's not just Kansas Social Workers Bill. The Hospital Association has much more power than we do because they have hospitals in every community. So we're really hoping next year maybe that gets considered. So right now, what I'm very concerned about, and we normally don't talk about federal advocacy here, but what's happening on the federal side is very unnerving to me. I have a brother with Down syndrome. He lives in the community, in a group home, goes to work, has a Medicare and Social Security disability. Is a very productive, great community because of Medicaid. Medicaid is one of the largest payers of mental health services in Kansas and across the nation. So the cuts being proposed in Congress would not only deny access to MIDI recipients, but then community mental health centers, federal clinics couldn't hire social workers to provide that. So the what's proposed in Congress now would reduce Medicaid recipients. Like a third of the Medicaid recipients would not have access in our nation. 6 out of 10 seniors in nursing homes are on Medicaid. The Medicaid provides the majority of medical care for beginning of life and at the end of life. 40% of 80s receive medical care. I grew up on a farm. My family are this generation farmers that homesteaded land in central Kansas. So the rural communities in Kansas are dear to me, and rural communities rely on Medicaid for their hospitals, for the clinics, their community mental health centers, for their hospices. If Medicaid is cut, a lot of these rural access clinics will not make it. Also, Children's Mercy in Kansas City relies on Medicaid. So it's not just your small hospitals, it's your rural hospitals. So the good news on Medicaid, I was in Washington, D.C. last week in my senator's office, and I sat there, and people are calling every minute, and I'm like, you go. And it was fighting about Medicaid, cuts of the safety net. Every minute they were answering that phone, and I could hear it. And so in Congress, it is harder to develop relationships with your U.S. senators. But you can develop relationships with their staff. I was a congressional aide for 12 years to Congressman Dennis Moore, and the staff is the front. You can meet with Senator Moran, Senator Marshall's staff. And what's also key with U.S. representatives is to keep up the volume. Keep calling Senator Moran. A social work friend of mine said every day she gets up, has her toast and coffee, and said, hello, Senator Marshall. Good day to protect Medicaid. Goodbye. So it is so much volume. I don't know how other congressmen or your senators do, but that when I worked, a lot of U.S. reps, their district staffs keep tabs. How many people called in today to protect Medicaid? How many people called in on that? So you don't have to go on and on when you call. Your email doesn't need to say a lot. It just is getting to the point. So they then tell their boss, Senator Moran, you have a lot of people concerned about Medicaid. And Senator Moran told us he has, and he's concerned too. So just keep up that if everyone in this room would email and call our U.S. senators and say, protect Medicaid, whoa, together we could have a voice. So the other things that I'm very worried about, and I would like to acknowledge my congressional U.S. Rep, Sharice Davis, is very much fighting to protect Medicaid. And I can't speak for the other congressional reps. I just know her personally, and she's fighting hard. So she's very much with us. And Social Work National has endorsed her every 2 years. So these are the other huge cuts to the safety net that's being considered. The Older Americans Act has not been reauthorized. That protects older adults from being hungry. SNAP, you heard about that earlier. Our HUD programs for homelessness. So why is this important to Kansas? Kansas has never added to these federal programs. You see that with Medicaid expansion. We take the federal money for the safety net and then we send it out. Other states add additional money for TANF, homelessness. Kansas, basically, through the years, has been very conservative with the safety net. So if the feds cut these safety net programs, will Kansas make up the difference? I'm skeptical because Kansas has never really added much to the safety net.
And that's why it's so important that we contact our U.S. representatives to protect these programs. So be the change. And I get overwhelmed listening to the news every day, and I just want to roll on my couch and wake up in another year. I mean, it's really hard because social workers are empath. I'm an empath, so I feel very deeply if I hear that the Older Americans Act has not been reauthorized. How can we even debate that? That program has been so successful to protect hunger. But we know how to advocate as a profession. That is our superpower. Just like when we deal with our clients about age, rapport, with trust, that's what you're going to do with your legislators today, by the first date. All you need to do at the first date, they know you live in their community, you're a social worker, where you work, and you want them to expand Medicaid. That's it. So it starts today, and just keep building that trust. I'm really proud that we have relationships as a professional association on both sides of the aisle because the trust built up. And that helps with each of you every year. I have legislators and send us your pictures. When I'll meet with the senator, I will say, hey, see Pittsburgh State as a social worker, never knew that with them? So you know about social workers in your district. And so by you being with them, that elevates that they are aware that social workers are in everyone in their district. There is a social worker, probably every state rep districts, from in the hospital to a nursing home to a clinic and so forth. So it starts with your experience. And so before you go, we ask that you look up who your legislator is. I know many of you know. And that you look up their office number at the Capitol. We have a table in front of the cafe for you to pick up the postcard, fill it out, and deliver it to your state representative, state senator's office. And all there you can get who your congressional rep is to go to open state. You don't know who your congressperson is. We all have Senator Rand and Senator Marshall as our federal senators. So stay connected. I joined. I mean, you don't have to pay, but I subscribe to all their newsletters, and I find that so valuable to subscribe to a lot of advocacy groups because when they send out alerts, that's when I know that I need to speak out, and I need to email my legislator. So follow your legislators on social media, but follow advocacy groups on social media and their email lists. So we hope that today that you walk away more confident. That's our goal today. That you find your legislator's office and you know how to go back and be there, so that you know where the committee hearings are, you know where they be, and so that you feel more empowered to speak up as an advocate for the clients you serve and the community that you live in. So together, you can speak up for justice, and together we have the stronger voice for social justice. And now more than ever, each one of us is needed to be that voice for those we work with.